EU foreign ministers have been holding an emergency meeting in Brussels this Friday to discuss plans to arm Iraq's Kurds against the ISIS insurgency. France and the US have already begun supplying weapons to Erbil, whose Peshmerga fighters have begun retaking some ground lost to the heavily armed militants. And Germany this week pledged to supply non-lethal equipment such as armoured vehicles, helmets and flak jackets. The UN estimates 1.2 million Iraqis have been internally displaced as they try to flee the fanatics who've been beheading, crucifying and burying their captives alive. Let's get the latest now from our correspondent in Brussels, Carmen Paun. Carmen, lengthy negotiations this Friday between the foreign ministers. What kind of consensus has eventually emerged on arming the Kurds?
Good evening. The EU Foreign Affairs Ministers endorsed any action by any EU member state who would want to supply arms to the Kurds if the Kurds so requested. So this is obviously a positive sign for France, who has already decided to do so, but also for the UK, who has announced that it will do the same, and for any other country that might decide to supply arms to the Kurds. We heard in a meeting today that some Eastern European countries are looking at the kind of ammunition that they have and whether they will be able to supply to the Kurds and maybe have it transported by another EU country such as the UK. And we understand that the UK has already taken some action to supply such ammunition from Eastern European countries. We also heard that the Czech Republic is looking at their supplies and considering by the end of this month what to send and when to send to Iraq. So there will be more news coming in the next few days after the EU foreign ministers go back to their country and have an internal debate on whether to supply arms to the Kurds or not. The EU foreign ministers also discussed the humanitarian situation in Iraq, which we know has been dire over the past few days, and they decided to make an air link with northern Iraq to supply very important goods such as water and food to the people that are stranded there.
Okay, Carmen, there was also strong words from the meeting on Ukraine, another warning to Russia not to destabilize the country. Tell us more.
Yes, indeed. The EU foreign ministers told Russia once again that any unilateral action to cross the Ukrainian border without the approval of the Ukrainian authorities will be considered as a blatant violation of international law and might have consequences. It is not clear yet what consequences, because the EU foreign affairs minister said that they still want to understand what the situation is right now at the Ukrainian-Russian border. They were hearing the information about the convoy that was destroyed by Ukraine as they were in the meeting, so they still wanted to check all the information and decide what the further steps will be. They once again called on Russia to de-escalate the situation, to come to the negotiations table and really help diffuse the tension in eastern Ukraine, as well as stop arming and giving any kind of support to the eastern Ukrainian separatists. But so far it's not really clear what the steps will be. It will remain to be seen in the next few days.
Carmen Paun, thank you very much for bringing us all the very latest there from Brussels. And let's stay with the Ukraine.